1.4, building functions from functions. So the first ones want us to find f plus g, f minus g, and f times g. So number 2, they give us f of x is equal to x minus 1 squared. G of x is equal to 3 minus x. And they want us to do f of x plus g of x. Dying. F of x plus g of x. So we have x minus 1 squared plus 3 minus x. What do I get when I square x minus 1?
X squared minus 1 or plus 1.
No.
Minus 1.
No. It's a special type.
Oh. Wait.
It's a word, but I get it wrong.
I'm not asking for the special type. I'm just asking for you to multiply it. I'm just saying it is a special type. It is a perfect square trinomial.
Plus, can I have f minus 2? I can't say
X.
1 squared. Root 1.
And then plus 3 minus x. So then to simplify it, we get x squared minus 3x plus 4. Then they want f of x minus g of x. So we have x minus 1 squared minus, and then it's in parentheses 3 minus x. You want to do that because that minus sign is going on everything in g of x. So I get x squared minus 2x plus 1 minus 3 plus x. So I end up getting x squared minus x minus 2. And then the last thing they want is f of x times g of x, which would be x minus 1 squared times 3 minus x. So I get x squared minus 2x plus 1 times 3 minus x. And what does that give me?
3x squared minus 6x
Plus 3.
minus x cubed minus 2x squared
Plus 2x squared and then minus x. So then, incorrect order, negative x cubed plus 5x squared minus 7x plus 3. Now, they also comment about writing what the domain of these functions are, but they're just all real numbers, so I'm not really doing that part of it. I'm not really worried about you doing that. If you have something like 4, and I'm just going to do the first part, but they have f of x is equal to the square root of x plus 5, and g of x is equal to the absolute value of x plus 3. When you go to do like your f of x plus g of x, the only thing literally that you can do is to say the square root of x plus 5 plus the absolute value of x plus 3, and like that's going to be your answer. So, like, it's kind of weird to, like, have something that you're leaving like that, but that's how they're wanting you to do it. Obviously, you could keep going, but it all is just going to look like that, so. So those ones take care of adding, subtracting, and multiplying. The next ones want you to do f over g and g over f. So basically it just gives you two functions and we're dividing them like both directions. So f of x is equal to the square root of x minus 2. G of x is equal to the square root of x plus 4. So they first want f over g. So we have the square root of x minus 2 over the square root of x plus 4. So what do I have to do when I have something like this?
Multiply by x minus 4. Yeah, that's
You're on the right track, just not saying the right thing.
top and bottom.
Top and bottom by what?
Square root of x.
X plus 4. You just said minus. So that gives me the square root of x minus 2 times x plus 4 over x plus 4 and then on the top you have the square root of x squared minus 2x plus 4x, so plus 2x minus 8 over x plus 4. And again, they're talking about the domain and stuff of this. I'm not worried about that. As far as domain, we would be finding what makes the top greater than or equal to 0 and what makes the bottom not 0. But I'm not worried about you doing that part. Then they want you to do g over f. So that's going to be the square root of x plus 4 over the square root of x minus 2. Multiply by the square root of x minus 2, top and bottom. So on top, that gives me the exact same thing, the square root of x squared plus 2x minus 8. On the bottom, we just get x minus 2. And that would be it for those. Any questions about adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing functions?
Actually, could you go back up to the 2 and...
No. If you leave the classroom, you have to just get it later. 12. Find f of g of 3 and g of f of negative 2. So I don't really like this notation. And so the notation that I typically use, but you need to be familiar with both, is f of g of 3 like this, or g of f of negative 2. Like that. And so what this says is I'm plugging this number into, so in the first case, I'm plugging 3 in for x and g of x. I get a number, and then I take that and I plug that into x and f of x. So my f of x is x squared minus 1, and g of x is 2x minus 3. So f of g of 3, what I do is I go ahead and plug in 3 to g of x. So I'll do g of 3 equals 2 times 3 minus 3, which would be what? 3. And then I take that number and plug it into f. So f of 3 would be 3 squared minus 1, which is 8. So that would be the final for the first part. For the second one, g of f of negative 2. I plug in negative 2 for x and f of x. So f of negative 2 is going to be negative 2 squared minus 1, which is 3. And then I do g of 3. So 2 times 3 minus 3, which that happens to be the opposite of what we had over here, is equal to 3. So the two answers for this are 8 and 3. So same, like this part that I wrote here is the same for that whole set of problems. So we'll use that again for 14. F of x equals x over x plus 1. G of x equals 9 minus x squared. So f of g of 3. Plug in 3 for g, so g of 3 is 9 minus 3 squared, which is
9 minus 3 squared. 9 minus 9 is 18.
0. And then f of 0, I get 0 over 0 plus 1, which is 0.
Minus 1 million.
And then over here, g of f of, what was it, negative 2. So f of negative 2, negative 2 over negative 2 plus 1 gives me 2. G of 2 is 9 minus 2 squared, which is 5. So my two answers for this one are 0 and 5. All right, the next problems, we're doing something kind of similar, except for now they want us to just do f of g of x and g of f of x. So there's nothing getting plugged in other than just a function into a function. So 16, we've got f of x equals x squared minus 1, and g of x equals 1 over x minus 1. So f of g of x, I take the function g of x and I plug it in for x and f of x, and I get 1 over x minus 1 squared minus 1, which gives you 1 over, in parentheses, x minus 1 squared minus 1. You can leave it there, or you can multiply this out. I don't care, but I would just probably leave it there myself. And then g of f of x. We plug in this function f of x to x and g of x. So I get 1 over x squared minus 1 minus 1, which gives me 1 over x squared minus 2, and that would be my answer for that one. Let's see, 22, same instructions. F of x equals 1 over x plus 1. G of x equals 1 over x minus 1. So f of g of x, I get 1 over, that x becomes 1 over x minus 1, and then the plus 1 over here. What's the problem now?
You have to like flip it, right?
There's two
I can't yet. I have a fraction and a fraction, so what do I have to do about it? How do I combine fractions? Or how do I combine a number and a fraction?
Do the common denominator.
What would my common denominator be?
X minus.
Yep, so I need to multiply by x minus 1 over x minus 1. So on top I have 1 over. On the bottom, I now have a smaller fraction. So 1 plus x minus 1, which ends up giving me 1 over x minus 1. Now what do I do with that? Divide by a fraction I. Keep change flip, so I end up with x minus 1 over x, and then just times 1, so I don't have to do anything else with it. Then g of f of x, I have 1 over x plus 1 minus 1. So I'm doing the same thing, except for now it's x plus 1. That's my common denominator. So I get 1 over, what's that, 1 minus x minus 1, which is 1 over negative x over x plus 1. Keep change flip, and I get x plus 1 over negative x. And that's my final answer on that. All right, so on these ones, they're giving us two separate functions. We're combining them together into one. Now we're kind of doing the reverse. Okay, so what's going to happen is they give us a function y equals, in parentheses, x cubed plus 1, and then that whole thing is squared. And they want us to determine what f of x is and what g of x is. And there can be multiple possible answers for the particular situation. So what I'm doing is I'm looking at this and I'm basically pulling an inner function. They want me to do it as if it's f of g of x. So g of x is my inner function, f of x is my outer function. So I'm going to say that my inner function is this x cubed plus 1. So what does that mean my outer function has to be? If I get rid of that, because that's my inner function, what am I left with? X squared. So if I plug this in, if I plug in my g of x value for x, then I would get x cubed plus 1 squared. So you're just doing the opposite, you're just breaking it apart. 26, y equals 1 over x cubed minus 5x plus 3. So with this one, 1 over x cubed minus 5x plus 3, what would my g of x be? Or what's an option for g of x to be?
X cubed minus 5x.
So everything in the denominator, so x cubed minus 5x plus 3, and what would that make f of x then? 1 over x. Now, another option for this same problem, just to show you that there are multiple answers that would work, I could have g of x just be x cubed minus 5x, and then f of x be 1 over x plus 3. And when I plug it in, I get the same end result of this 1 over x cubed minus 5x plus 3. Okay, so on a quiz or a test, when I'm grading them, like, I'm not just accepting like one possible answer. Like, can be like quite a few options that will work. So just know, like, if you get something marked wrong and you really feel like it's right, show me, because it could just be that it just is an option that I like missed when I was writing them out. I try to write out like multiple on the key, but sometimes I forget one. So 28. Y equals e to the sine of x. What could g of x be? Or what function's getting plugged in?
It'd be like
Sine x, which if we did sine of x, what would it make f of x?
e to the power of x.
Yep, e to the x. Find two functions defined implicitly by the given relation. 38 x plus y squared equals 25. So basically all it's saying is get y by itself, and because all the y's in these problems are squared, you're going to end up with two answers. That's all it wants us to basically come to the conclusion of. So subtract x, y squared equals negative x plus 25. Take the square root. I get plus or minus the square root of negative x plus 25, and that would be the two functions that it's looking for. (40) 3x squared minus y squared equals 25. How do I get y by itself? Subtract 3x squared, so negative y squared equals negative 3x squared plus 25. Now what?
Well, divide by negative.
Divide by negative, so y squared equals 3x squared minus 25. And finally, what do I do?
Y equals plus or minus the square root.
Yep, y equals plus or minus square root of 3x squared minus 25. Any questions on any of this stuff?
Is that the end?
Yes.
Can I borrow someone's paper?
Alright, problems are 1, 5, 11, 17, 21, 23, 29, 37, and 43. These are not due tomorrow. I'm going to give you tomorrow to work on these and move the quiz to Friday.